Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining here at Tushita. We're going to do 6 days thinking about self-compassion, what self-compassion is, and how we can generate it. It's a little bit weird because I have a screen with you on the right side. So sometimes I'm going to look at the right side, but I'm actually looking at you when I do that, so that you know. So before we start, I need to explain you a little bit about how we can interact with each other, because you're going to be unmuted during the session. And so if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can find on the bottom of your screen, there is a bar. And one bar, it says chat. Do you see that? And so when you click on chat, you see at the right side, you see a little box where you can type in your message. If you have questions coming up during the teaching, you can type in your message and you can send that either to everyone, then I will see it, or you send it to me. Where am I, Felipe?
Yeah, you're there as Linda Jamian.
Yes.
And they won't be able to send to everyone, only to either of us.
All right. But I get everyone in the chat.
You get everyone because you're co-host.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can choose between Register Tushita or me. So if you have questions for me, you can send them straight to me. If they go to Register Tushita, they will also come to me. If you, sometimes during the teachings, I might ask you a question, like what does this mean for you? Or how does it feel for you? And then you can also type, but it would be good if you send it to me, right? So then I can see it straight away and integrate it in the teaching. Another thing that I need to say before we start is that we are in India, and besides that, India is starting the monsoon, which means that if it starts really raining very hard, the internet sometimes gets unstable or we lose it. So if that happens, please be patient. We will come back if it's possible. You know, sometimes the cuts are not so long. So just stay connected, and we are trying to get back to you as soon as possible. Okay. So 6 days talking about self-compassion, becoming friends with yourself. We're going to do 6 days. Every day we will have a teaching for about an hour, maybe 70 minutes, and then we do a meditation, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how things are going. The relationship with ourselves is for many people the most difficult relationship that we have. And at the same time, that relationship determines so much how we relate to others. So any problems that we have in relationships, they often start because the way we relate to ourselves. And so we're going to try to find, we're going to try to create the conditions so that you can start developing a different kind of relationship with yourself, a more loving, a more kind a relationship in which you can accept yourself as you are. And at the moment we have some obstacles to that, right? We might feel that, well, parts of me are not good enough, and first I have to fix that before I can really fully be myself. Or we feel that actually something is wrong with me, and so that I can never show to anyone. And so then we start hiding ourselves or aspects of ourselves. And by doing that, we are actually setting ourselves up for problems. Problems in how we relate to ourselves and problems in how we relate to others. So during these 6 days, what I would like to do is we're going to talk about what self-compassion means. And we do that in relation to the day-to-day experiences that we have, how we can be more self-compassionate there, but we will also do it in the context of spiritual practice, so that the way that we practice self-compassion is coherent with the Buddhist path, right? So that there is no contradiction there. So we're going to look first into why it is so difficult to practice self-compassion, because often we are the ones that we are treating worse, isn't it? It's like we can love many, many, many people, but ourselves, maybe we hate ourselves, right? There is how to say? It is almost as if we come last. If we send out love, we are the last ones to receive it. So we're going to see how we can change that we are becoming more equal to others. And then from there we go into, I would like to give you some tools how you can be with that aspect of yourself that you don't like, or that you hate, or that you think is wrong, how you can be with that in a safe way, in a compassionate way, so that you know, maybe we can see that there are a lot of qualities there hiding that you haven't been able to actualize at the moment. So, and then in the last few days, we're going to talk about how to let go of what we're holding on to. And that also includes forgiveness, and how we can appreciate the good things that we have in life. And then we can also spend some time in how to be with suffering. When we experience suffering, often we want to run away, we don't want to feel it, we do not want to stay with the experience. We have many ways of not feeling what we are feeling. So how can we experience the suffering? How can we be with that? And if we are able to do that, then we can also maybe look into how we can extend it to others. Okay, so that's a little bit the overview of the course, what we're going to do. And so today we're going to start with looking at what self-compassion is and what self-compassion is not. And after that, we're going to talk about the mind, the nature of the mind, and the potential of the mind. Okay. So then before we start, when we do Mahayana Buddhism, we always say that there are two things very important. That is your motivation of how you engage in the activities that you're doing, and at the end, the dedication. If these two are done from the Mahayana perspective, the result of what we are doing today is going to ripen for, they say, until we really achieve our full potential. Okay. So we just take a few minutes. We won't take too long. Where you sit, maybe you can close your eyes. Sit comfortable, relaxed. And bring your awareness to your body. All your thoughts that are maybe still caught up in the past, the things that you have been doing today, maybe there's some worry in your mind. Try to let that go for now. But instead, bring your awareness to your body and to your breath. And then all the thoughts that are already thinking about the future, what you're going to do after the session, what you're going to do tomorrow. Also bring these thoughts to your body. To your breath. This is your quality time. And when we can really be with the body, the mind is in the present moment. And in the present moment, disturbances cannot arise so easily. So the mind becomes more calm, more peaceful, more clear. And then we can set up a motivation by thinking that listening to the teachings where we learn to relate in a more loving and kind manner with ourselves, that we are doing that so that whatever qualities arise in our mind, that we can share that with others, and with that be of more benefit to others. And then relax. And then we can start. And then we first start thinking about what is self-compassion and what is self-compassion not. So as I said before, all the relationships that we have are based on how we relate to ourselves. And if we check in our life, we can see that we attract certain kinds of relationships. And in these relationships, something in us gets triggered. Our buttons get pushed in a certain way. And so sometimes we go through a relationship and we're struggling with the buttons that get pushed, and maybe we finish the relationship, and after a couple of years we meet somebody else and we engage again. We think, oh, this person is very different. And then after half a year, 1 year, suddenly they start to trigger the same buttons, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm in the same situation. How is that possible? I thought this person was different, right? So sometimes it's like we do not want to be triggered in these painful buttons, but it keeps happening again and again and again. So instead of avoiding them, in this course, we're going to look at it and we're going to say, what can we do with these buttons so that they, instead of buttons, maybe become something more beneficial for us, something that we can learn from, something that we can use to grow our qualities of love and compassion. So self-compassion, if we look into the definition according to Buddhism, compassion is the wish for others to be free from suffering. And others means others including us. Self-compassion, I wouldn't say, is the wish for oneself to be free of suffering. And if we look into the whole Buddhist path, before we enter into the Mahayana path, which we enter when we develop the mind that wishes to free all sentient beings, and in order to do that, develop one's full potential. Before we can go there, we first need to generate a mind that wishes to become free from suffering for oneself. And in dependence on that mind, we say, oh, but I'm not the only person who is suffering. Everyone around me is suffering as well. Right? So if we want to, we can somehow compare self-compassion with renunciation from samsara. Renunciation from samsara means I do not want to suffer anymore. Right? So that on the spiritual path, I would say that self-compassion, we can compare that with renunciation. In our daily practice, I think we need a little bit more in order to really generate self-compassion for ourselves. So we're going to look at both aspects, how we do it on the path in terms of renunciation. What does it mean? I want to be free of suffering. And how do we do it on a day-to-day basis? So many of us, and I don't know for you, but maybe I'm filling this in. But if you are already doing something with Buddhism and you are on the Mahayana path, then what we often do is we jump straight into, I want to work for the benefit of others. That's so beautiful. I can open my heart and I'll be there for everyone, right? I don't need anything. And we might even feel that if I'm going to work for me, that's actually selfish, you know? Or if I have my own needs, then I say, oh, well, that's self-cherishing. We can't do that. We are on the Mahayana path. We are just cherishing others. Thinking about our own benefit can also feel uncomfortable because we feel like maybe I'm not worthy, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I do not deserve to get this attention, right? So in order to really develop the mind of self-compassion, we somehow have to see that working for our own benefit is not different than working for the benefit of others. When I grew up, working for the benefit of others was totally contradictory of working for your own benefit. And so for a long time, when I started looking into this topic, I thought that maybe due to Christian upbringing, you know, where you learn that you're a sinner from the beginning, and that you are living in order to serve others, and that, you know, you're somehow not allowed to do things for yourself. So I thought maybe it's because of that in my mind, that looks contradictory. But then I read somewhere in a book from Thupten Jinpa, and he said he thought it is more coming due to the fact that everybody is working more and more and more, not for their own benefit, but somehow we are losing in our culture, we are losing the structure of family, we are losing the structure of community, and we become more and more individuals. And he thought because of that, working for one's own benefit and working for the benefit of others can become contradictory. I don't know. Do you recognize that? That when you work for others, you forget yourself? Or when you work for yourself, you forget everybody else, and then you feel really selfish? You recognize that? You don't recognize that? That's great. If you want to share a little bit, you can. When I work for others, I feel completely drained, yes. And so when you get drained while working for others, that means that while you work for others, you forget yourself. You do not know how to sustain your own energy in working for others. So this is what we have to try to find out. How can we work for others and at the same time energize ourselves, take care of ourselves? It can also be when you have these two contradictory things, that you work for others and you get so burned out, and then you think, I'm going to give that up. This is not my path. This doesn't work for me, right? We think Mahayana is not for me. I go to the Hinayana path where I just work for my own benefit. Some people, they think, you know, when I work for others, this feeling that I have of myself, and I'm not so happy with that. So I just keep working for the benefit of others, and maybe this I is going to disappear. You know, maybe this I is going to transform if I just work for others, if I don't give it any attention. Anyway, that I is empty anyway, and it is just my self-cherishing mind. And then it becomes, you know, if you work from that kind of motivation, you know that at a certain point, it's going to hit you. Or you hit a wall or something. It's going to come back to you in a very, maybe you're going to get sick. Maybe you get such a burnout that you really cannot do it anymore. So we have to look in that mind and see that there's the self-compassion and the compassion for others, that there is no contradictory, that they are the same thing. All right, I'm just going to read. And so somebody says, if I work for my own benefit and become a better version of myself, then that helps me with the interaction with others. That's true. Okay. So if we renounce ourselves in a way that we abandon our own needs, then working for the benefit of others while abandoning your own needs is actually harming you, right? So how can we work for the benefit of others without harming ourselves? And even better, how can we work for the benefit of others while at the same time taking care of ourselves? If we want to become enlightened, or I could call that the best version of myself, if I want to develop all my qualities of wisdom and compassion, that means I'm going to achieve the state that is the most happy state on this planet, the most blissful state on this planet. So that means I'm going to benefit myself while I'm on the path, while I'm progressing, developing more wisdom and compassion. So it cannot be that we have to abandon ourselves, abandon all our own needs in order to do that, right? I abandon all my needs and then I become a Buddha and suddenly all my needs are fulfilled. I think while we progress on the path, we also fulfill our own needs. Right? They go together. So what is the difference between self-compassion and what is self-compassion not? So I go there. So self-compassion, we sometimes might think, well, then I have to give so much attention to myself, you know, then I become a little bit self-absorbed. Or I might even have the feeling I become narcissistic, all the time thinking about my own needs. But if we develop true self-compassion, then we can take care of ourselves, while at the same time we can be attentive to the feelings and the needs of those around us. When we are self-centered, our mind is very caught up in our own world, right? And the mind just goes around and around and around thinking about the same thing, and it is all about me, 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 me. And we are not really aware of who is around us. There is not much room for anybody else except the me. Well, self-compassion, I am taking care of my own needs, but I'm also connected to the needs of others. Can you see that difference? Self-compassion is also not the same as self-pity. You know, when we have a self-pity mind, the mind says, oh, poor me, look at what happened to me. This person said this to me, that person did that to me. We feel so sorry for ourselves. Also, the self-pity mind is quite self-absorbed. It's all about me. Well, if we have self-compassion, then we can see that it's not just me. that who experiences this. What I experience today, what I do not like, is actually a shared experience. Many people experience the same thing. And we are aware of these people. Right? It's different. So we are, when we look into what self-compassion is not, we're going to see that some minds, they are selfish. And we do not want to develop that. And there are some minds that are aware of our own needs, that take care of our own needs, but we are not totally absorbed by that. We're still open for others around us. Can you see the difference? So self-compassion is also not self-gratification. You know, self-compassion is, I do not want to suffer, so therefore I give myself whatever I want. Right? Often that is the way that we are kind to ourselves. I'll give myself whatever I want. But that's not self-compassion. Sometimes we think, oh, I really need a treat, right? I'll have a coffee or whatever, new pair of shoes, or I don't know how you treat yourself. And so you give yourself the treat. And then what? You know? Is that compassion? Is that being free from suffering? Not really. It's maybe like a Band-Aid, right? Maybe we felt miserable. I know one time a lady said to me, when I'm depressed, I have to go out and buy a new pair of shoes. Then the depression is gone. So that's what she did. And she had all these shoes at home that she never wore, but it was her remedy to being depressed, right? That helps only for a certain amount of time, right? And soon depression comes again. You have to get out again to buy more new shoes. So that is treating ourselves in order not to feel the misery that we feel inside. That's not self-compassion, that's self-gratification. The moments that we do give ourselves a treat, then if we have self-compassion, we do not beat ourselves up for having done that, right? We are human beings and we have these tendencies that when there is suffering in the mind, when we don't feel happy, when we feel down, when we need a treat in order to uplift the mind. And so maybe you know that that is only going to help temporarily. And so then you say, oh, there I did it again and I shouldn't have done that and I'm fooling myself. And so being self-compassionate is saying, okay, you gave yourself a treat, that's okay. You know? Next time, we're going to try to do it differently. And so then finally, self-compassion is also not the same as self-esteem, right? We can think, I think many times we think when I have low self-esteem, I'm not compassionate with myself. Yes, that can be true, but being compassionate with yourself is not the same as having a good self-esteem. Because for self-esteem, we need to do something in order to have value. We compare ourselves with others or with ourselves, you know, oh, look what I managed today, this and this and this and this I have been able to do, and that makes your self-esteem grow. Well, self-compassion is, for self-compassion, it doesn't matter what you are doing, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes or not make mistakes, if you're perfect or not perfect, all doesn't matter. Self-compassion means that you are non-judgmental in your heart, in your mind, towards your suffering, towards your needs. So you are gentle with yourself, you are caring with yourself. Can you see the difference? So if we think about what is selfish, you know, because I know that many of you have heard somewhere in your life that when you take care of yourself, you are selfish, you know, and selfish means in Buddhism, I would say self-absorbed, self-centered, only focused on you and forgetting about everybody else. And yes, we try not to do that. But when we have self-compassion in a healthy way, we are not forgetting others. We can take care of our own needs, but at the same time, we are open for the needs of others. And so maybe now you say, I do not know how to do that, and that's okay, you know, because that's why we're doing the course. But I want you to see that thinking about self-compassion is not going to make you a more selfish person. It's going to make you a more loving and more compassionate person also towards others. All right. So maybe now you have heard this, you have a little bit of an idea what self-compassion is. And then you might think, oh, that's great. We're not going to talk about my self-pity mind. We're not going to talk about I have the feeling, what is wrong with me. We're not going to talk about that part that I think is not good enough. Great, because I do not like to go to that place in me. But actually, we are going to talk about the self-pity mind. We are going to talk about that mind, that part of our mind that believes it's not good enough, it's not worthy, it doesn't deserve to be happy or to have good things coming to it. Because that is the mind that holds us back from being friends with ourselves, right? That is the part of the mind that we say, I don't like you, I hate you, get away. You know, I stay down there somewhere, I do not want to see you. But if we allow that mind to surface, if we start connecting with that mind actually contains such precious opportunities for growth, for growing your potential of wisdom, of compassion, of loving kindness. Sometimes they talk about having some gold buried in the mud, right? And we don't like to dig through the mud. We just want what is on the surface of the mud. But if you start digging in the mud and you find the gold, you know, then you can take the gold out and you can polish it. And also, yeah, once you start finding the preciousness of what we are hiding, you know, then whatever you feel that wasn't good enough, that just disappears. It's not there anymore. Do you believe me? I didn't believe it for many years. I thought, yes, that's for other people, but not for me. Right? Because that feeling inside where we feel I'm not good enough, something is wrong with me, that feels so real and that feels so concrete, and that feels at every time it pops up when we have problems. And that makes that it feels like it is always there. And that is what we really are. And that part we have never been able to turn that into something else. It keeps popping up. So it appears like, well, it's really there. True? So in order to see that the mistake that we make is not that something is wrong inside us, but what the mistake that we make is that we believe there is something wrong. So there's not something really wrong. The only thing that is wrong is that I think I'm wrong, or I think that I'm not good enough, or I think that I don't deserve. It is a thought, it is a belief. And yes, I know that belief can be very deep, and it can feel like it's sitting in each and every cell of our body. And so it feels like, I have no idea how to change this. So in order to give you some perspective that it is possible to totally shift that mind, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the mind and about the potential of the mind and how the mind works and how the mind exists according to Buddhism. If you have a Christian background, then you know, and you learn that you're sinners from the beginning and that there was something really bad inside you that you shouldn't show anyone at any time because nobody is going to like you anymore. Sinners from the beginning in Buddhism doesn't exist. In Buddhism, we say human beings, sentient beings are by nature good. The mind is by nature pure. And then in that mind, yes, we have delusions, we have disturbing emotions, we have ignorance. And that ignorance has been there since the beginning. But we are not that ignorance. We are not our disturbing emotions. We are not our anger. We are not our attachment. Which means we can go beyond that. If we would really be our disturbing emotions, if we would really be sinners from the beginning, it would not be possible to change that. True? So if that would be true, we better stop, you know, because it would be very depressive to talk about something that we cannot achieve. But because the mind is not like that, because the ignorance is not really part of our true nature. Once we develop a mind that is contradictory or opposite to that ignorance, the ignorance will disappear. True? So in Buddhism, we say the mind is by nature pure. By nature, there are no disturbing emotions in the mind. The mind is, if we talk about a definition, then we say the mind is that which is clear and knowing. And clear means it is like space. We can't touch it. It has no color. We can't feel it. It is just like space, like the blue sky. And then in the mind, all kinds of thoughts, emotions, beliefs, feelings arise. And we can compare them with the clouds in the sky. So the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts that arise in the mind, they can obscure the mind, just as the clouds can obscure the sky. But they can never touch the purity of the mind, just as the clouds can never touch the blueness of the sky. Clouds can cover the sky, and you cannot see the sky. And that is like our ignorance, you know, it is like a veil that is covering our awareness. But it is never touching the purity of our awareness. Just as the sky, the clouds never touch the nature of the sky. So no matter how bad you feel inside, no matter how not good enough you feel inside, that is not your true nature. If that was your true nature, you cannot talk about developing your mind. You cannot talk about developing your wisdom. You cannot talk about developing your compassion. if being not good enough is your true nature. So you have made a mistake there by thinking that it is your true nature. And that is not a mistake that I think we do not make that mistake on our own. You know, I think this mistake comes about in relationship to others, that we get a message from somebody that we're not good enough, that we get a message from somebody that we don't deserve, or that we're not worthy. And then we adopt that as a truth. And it is so painful to feel that we never revisit that to check if it is really true. Right? It is a part of us where we do not want to go because it's too painful. But if we could go there and if we could investigate, is that really true? Can anything exist like that? You know, then you would, I think, take some power back, because you would never be able to find anything that you believe is really part of your nature. So the mind works like this. Thoughts and feelings arise, and whatever arises in the mind is impermanent. It arises in the mind and then it dissolves back into the mind. There is nothing that can stay in the mind forever. Right? Anger arises in the mind. We cannot stay forever angry. At a certain point, the anger subsides, and then other qualities arise in the mind. At the moment, loving kindness also doesn't arise forever. Due to causes and conditions, loving kindness can arise, but when the causes and conditions are finished, the loving kindness also disappears out of our mind. That feeling of self also arises due to causes and conditions. And when we are deeply hurt, when somebody pushes the button of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, right? That hurt can stay there for a while. But we also know that at a certain point, the mind shifts and we don't feel it anymore. Then what we think is, but I know it's still there. Because, you know, in a while, when the buttons get pushed again, I know it's going to come up. That gives us the impression that that I is that painful part of us that we don't like. That is somewhere sitting inside us, hiding, waiting for it to be triggered again. It gives a feeling of it is substantially existent and it is there all the time. You should check if you have that same kind of feeling with other qualities that arise in the mind. And I think when we have certain aspects arising more often, you know, or certain qualities arising more often due to causes and conditions, but also due to familiarity, then they start to become part of our character. And they start to become part of our personality. And the more they become part of our personality, the more it looks like, well, that's just who I am, right? Some people say, I'm just an angry person, or I'm just short-tempered, or I'm just whatever. But you have become that due to causes and conditions. That's not your true nature. And so when we change causes and conditions, we can change the mind. And because the mind is like space, and because the mind has no characteristics of its own, we can change the mind into whatever we feed it, whatever we practice. At the moment, our mind is quite distracted. We have trouble with mindfulness, right? Then we engage in training, and we train mindfulness, and we train more, and we train more, and we train more. And then at a certain point, our mind is actually quite focused. Wow, I'm so mindful, you know? And when you're very mindful, and you have trained your mind in being mindful, then try to be distracted. Very difficult. Same with if you feel like I have a short-tempered nature, or I'm an angry person. If you start practicing loving kindness, if you start practicing patience in a healthy way, you can become that. You become almost another person. You're still the same person, but we say that, right? Wow, that person has changed so much. How is that possible? Because you change the causes and the conditions. You change your training program. You change what you have been habituating yourself with. So the mind is that which is clear and knowing. It is like space, and it has no characteristics of its own. And it is by nature pure. Which means that whatever arises in the mind, no matter how it looks like, that is what you really are. Buddhism says all that is not really who you are. All that is not really true. Which means you can change. You can change whatever you want to change. Whatever makes you unhappy, you don't have to stay with that. You can change that. It's not your true nature. So because the mind has no characteristics of its own, that means that we have the potential to develop all good qualities in a limitless way. So when we talk in Buddhism about developing the mind of enlightenment, wanting all sentient beings to be happy, having loving kindness in our heart for all sentient beings, that is not just a saying. That is something that becomes a living reality if you really practice. Which means that each and every person you meet during the day, you can wish them to be happy. I wish you to be happy. Or you can meet every person during the day as a good friend of yours. And His Holiness sometimes says that. When I meet people, I always have the feeling I meet an old friend. What is that? That shows that he's practicing loving kindness and compassion all the time. And he has become so good in it that it looks like it is natural for him. Right? But there was a point in time that he was the same as us. And what is different with him is that he devoted his life to really practice loving kindness and compassion for each and every person that was in front of him, that is in front of him. So that's something that you can also do. If we can develop loving kindness for everyone, then we also can develop loving kindness for ourselves. if we know how to develop loving kindness for ourselves, it becomes much easier how to be kind to others. Right? Because at the moment, due to the wrong beliefs that we have about ourselves, where we feel not good enough, where we feel not worthy, where we feel that we don't deserve, when we get triggered there, and that is always in a relationship, we feel unhappy. So if we can somehow find a way that we can see that these beliefs are just beliefs and they have no ground in actuality, no basis in actuality. If we can see that and we can let that go, loving kindness, self-compassion will naturally arise. If we would really be unworthy or not deserving, then we should find something if we start looking for that. No, that is not worthy. This part is not worthy. This part of me doesn't deserve that. We should be able to somehow identify that part. True? If it is really true, you should be able to find something there that is not good enough. True? So then when you start looking inside, there should be something that shows, oh, that is what is not good enough. But I think when we start looking inside, you cannot find anything like that. Why? Because on the conventional level, such thing can simply not exist within the mind. Because everything that arises in the mind is impermanent by nature. If it would be truly existent, it would be not impermanent. It would be there permanently, right? And it sometimes feels like that. Oh, that feeling in me that has always been there. And then we think, and therefore it's going to be always there. And therefore it feels permanent. And it feels quite solid. But then we have to use our intellectual capacity and say, can anything exist like that? Being permanent and solid inside our mind. Or maybe you feel it is in my body. It's sitting in my body. I can feel it in my stomach. I can feel it in my heart. I can feel it maybe, and you feel it in your throat. If you feel that thing in your body, you can say, okay, if it is, it feels like it is in my body. If it exists in my body, where is it? Which part of me is it? Which part of my body is it? If there was such not worthy self living inside our body, I would think that the surgeons would already have found something like that doing operations, right? They have cut open all kinds of bodies, all parts of the body. They go into and they go very, very deep to the cellular level. And I've never heard a surgeon coming back, look what I found. Here it is. The self-pity mind, the poor me, the I'm not good enough. They never found that, right? So if it would be living in the body, we should be able to point it out and say, that is the structure, that is that self-pity mind. And nobody ever has found that. True? So although it might feel quite physical, We cannot find it physically. And then we can think, but then it is in the mind. It is part of my mind. It is maybe the deepest part of my mind. Or maybe it is just, maybe it is the deepest part of my mind. Is it? I don't know. We bury it very deep. So if that would be truly there, then when we investigate in the mind, we should be able to pinpoint it somehow. Which aspect of your mind is it? So what we do is, I'll tell you a little bit how the mind works. In general, we can say that, there is a reality that we perceive with our senses, right? I see, I don't know, beautiful flowers. They appear to my mind. And then in my mind, I make a kind of a concept, an idea about these flowers. And also I give it a name with my mind. And then that idea that I have, that concept that I have, somehow seem to match with the flowers outside. And what we do is we think that what I see outside, the flowers that I see with my eyes, and the flowers that are the concept in my mind, we think that these two are the same thing. But the flowers that I see with my eyes, what I see is not just the flowers. I see the color of the flowers. I see the impermanence of the flowers. I see all the details of the flowers. I see the flowers as a whole, all the qualities. I see them with my eyes. Then in my mind, how the mind works is the image that I have of flowers is that my mind eliminates everything that is not flower. And then some kind of image remains of flowers. And that image is permanent by nature. That image doesn't have any qualities of the flower appearing to it. It is a very simple image. Right? It's a little bit, I give you a very shortcut on that. So, but what we do is then this image and the flowers outside, we somehow think they're the same thing. And so we think that when we think about flowers, we're thinking about real flowers. But the impression that the mind has thinking about flowers is very different than the information that we get when we really see the flower. True? So when we have this feeling inside, I'm not good enough, then what we do, or maybe we don't even have the feeling I'm not good enough. We have a feeling which hurts, right? And that somehow fits the belief of I'm not good enough. The feeling is real. It hurts. But then the image that we put on it, I'm not good enough, that is coming from our own mind. That is an interpretation of our own mind. And then we believe that what I feel inside and what I think about it are the same thing, and they're really true. That's how it really is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to connect with the feelings that are there, the painful feelings. And we're going to see that the projection onto these feelings, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, I'm not worthy, that is coming from somewhere else. And we do not have to keep projecting that onto these feelings that arise in the mind. The feelings that arise have actually nothing to do with that projection that we put onto it. They're two different things. Do you get that? Cool. I'm going to look at if there's a question. If we are a happy person, is that real, or is it due to causes and conditions? Yeah, also happiness arises due to causes and conditions. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow, I think day after tomorrow. Where does happiness come from? The feeling is real in the sense that we really feel it, right? Suffering is also real because we feel it, we experience it. Then what we think about that is coming from our own mind. Often the feelings that arise in the mind, we might not be able to change that, but the way we think about it and the way, therefore, how we react to the feelings, we can totally change that. So in general, feelings that arise in the mind, feelings that arise, if we just allow the feelings to arise, that is maybe, in terms of suffering, is maybe 10% of our suffering. And then we have a mind that starts to comment. Oh, why did that happen to me? And I should have, and maybe we beat ourselves up, maybe we blame the other person. That mind is causing like 90% of the suffering. So that mind we can change. So sometimes we get hurt, we might not be able to change that, but then believing, well, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, disconnecting ourselves from everybody else, that we can change. If we start looking in a different way at the experiences that we have. All right. I can just, let me have if you make very long questions, it's going to take me a long time to read it. Yes, so somebody says, if you get treated in a certain way, then we often see that that happens because of us. There is something in us that happens. But we will see during the course that whatever happens to whatever others do to us has, I would say, 99.9% of the time, nothing to do with us. But what we do is we think it is because of us. Oh yeah, because it happens again. And oh, again, this person is telling me that. Oh, again, this person is giving me this and this feeling. But if we start seeing that we can change how we react and that things do not have to keep happening in a certain way, then when people inflict harm on us, we can at a certain point also see that has nothing to do with us. But we'll explain that. And then a few questions about the nature of the mind. So is clear and knowing the same as Buddha nature? No. So clear and knowing refers to the conventional nature of the mind. The mind is like space, right? Conventionally, we cannot see mind. It is like space. Also, everything that arises in the mind, whether that is a delusion or a positive quality, is also clear and knowing by nature. We talk about clear and knowing because the clarity shows that the mind itself has no characteristics and things arise in the mind. But if we change causes and conditions, then we can also change whatever arises in the mind. When we talk about Buddha nature, we talk about the empty nature of the mind. that there is nothing in the mind that is like that. There is nothing in the mind that exists inherently. There is nothing in the mind that exists independently, autonomously. The mind is free of that. And because the mind is free of that, we can change this into anything. So the pure nature of the mind is not the same as bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, bodhicitta is the first, in order to generate the mind of bodhicitta, we need the conventional nature of the mind. We need to generate loving kindness, compassion for all sentient beings, right? That we do with our thinking, to transform our mind in a mind that can feel love and compassion for each and every sentient being. So that's the conventional mind. But we have that capacity due to the Buddha nature, due to the ultimate nature of our mind. If the mind would not have Buddha nature, if the mind would not be empty of inherent existence, we would not be able to conventionally generate bodhicitta. And so somebody says, what is the difference between mind and soul? That's the last one that I do, and then we'll do a meditation. So in Buddhism, we don't speak about soul. We talk about mind, mind being that which is clear and knowing. Whatever we experience is mind. Right? Whatever we feel, whatever we think, that is all mind. Some people have the feeling that deep inside me there is this essence, and I can call that a soul, because it feels like it is my guide, like it has always been there. I can talk to my soul tells me what to do. So that is part of our mind, you know, and maybe you can call it an inner wisdom that you have been carrying with you from previous lives. Maybe some people call it is my intuition. I think soul and intuition is something different, you know. But what we do is we refer to a quality that we perceive in the mind. And it feels like that always has been there. Well, maybe it has been there for a long time. And maybe it is based, often the soul has wisdom with it. So maybe it is old wisdom that you bring with you from past lives. Could be. But Buddhism doesn't recognize any entity that is unitary, that is independent, because that is, you know, this like, soul is almost independent. We relate to our soul. So according to Buddhism, there is nothing that exists like that. That doesn't mean that what you feel is not true, right? But we would just label it in a different way. We would give it a different name. So there's a question what to do when your actions are self-compassionate but lack compassion for others. I think in the next few days, we're going to check if that is possible. All right, so hold that question, write it down for yourself, and then we can see if we can answer that in the next few days. And if that is still a question, because maybe, yeah, maybe your question drops, I don't know. So what I would like you to do for tomorrow is that you write down these deep beliefs that you have about yourself. You know, what is it that you believe about yourself where you do not have a happy relationship with? Which you feel, oh, these are aspects of me that I don't like, that I hate, that are always bothering me, that are not helping me, that are always trying to block me. Write them down. right? Just for yourself, so that we get more connection with that aspect. And so then tomorrow we're going to talk about, where does our lack of self-compassion come from? All right? Because in Buddhism, we always talk about where are we suffering from? And then what is the cause of that suffering? And the better we can see the cause of the suffering, within that, there is already the solution of how we can overcome that. But if we don't understand the root causes, it is very difficult to change anything, you know? Then whatever we do becomes like a Band-Aid. We want to go a little bit deeper than that. True? And so if you have any other questions coming up, so I can see that the questions are going, and if I don't look fast enough, then I miss the questions. But I will look through them tonight, and if you have other questions, please bring them with you tomorrow, you know, and it might take a day before I come back to it, but I try to integrate your questions into what we're speaking about in the next few days. Okay? So then I would like to do a meditation on the clarity of the mind, the clear nature, you know, so that you can recognize it in your own mind. Because that might give you some kind of feeling of, oh, you know, there is nothing to hold on to. There is nothing that is existing the way it feels like. It cannot be there like that. All right? So give yourself a few moments to reconnect with your body. Let go of all the thoughts that are now running through your mind. Maybe that is your wisdom at work. You know, and that wisdom will keep working, but we can just let it go. And if you find it pleasant, you can also focus your awareness on your breath by observing the rising and falling of your abdomen every time you breathe in and breathe out. And all your thoughts are coming to rest. And then reflect on what the mind is. It is that which is clear and knowing. The nature of the mind is like space. It has no color, no shape. We can't see it, we can't touch it. And because it is like space, it allows qualities to arise in it. And these qualities can be positive, such as love and compassion. They can be negative, such as the disturbing emotions. Or the qualities can be neutral, like sleep. So visualize your mind like space. And then you visualize what can arise in your mind. It is arising in a space. And whatever arises naturally dissolves back into the mind. It disappears. So the nature of the mind is that which is clear and knowing. And the nature of whatever arises in the mind is also clear and knowing. The nature of our wisdom mind is clear and knowing. The nature of a loving mind is clear and knowing. And the nature of our deluded mind is also clear and knowing. Although whatever arises in the mind has the same nature as the mind, it is not the mind itself. Just as the waves of the ocean have the same nature as the ocean, they are both water. And although they have the same nature, the waves are not the ocean itself. The waves, they come and go, arise from the ocean and dissolve back into the ocean. Like waves, attachment and anger arise in the mind and then dissolve back into the mind. And although they arise in the mind, they are not the mind itself. They arise in dependence on causes and conditions. If attachment and anger were the mind itself, they would have to stay forever. And we can see that this is not true. Wisdom and compassion can also arise in the mind. Although they have the same nature as the mind, they are not the mind itself. They arise in the mind due to causes and conditions, and they dissolve back into the mind. They are impermanent, and therefore they come and go. We can compare the nature of the mind with the blue sky. And whatever arises in the mind, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, we can compare them with the clouds in the sky. Although the clouds appear in the sky, they are not the sky itself. The clouds come and go, just as our thoughts, feelings, and emotions come and go. Normally in our mind, we are mainly focused on whatever arises in the mind, as if we are only focusing on the clouds in the sky. But just as the clouds are not the nature of the blue sky, whatever arises in our mind is not the nature of the mind. Sometimes the sky is full of clouds, so much that we can't see the blue sky anymore. Not being able to see the blue sky doesn't mean that the blue sky doesn't exist. It is always there. Although the blue sky can be covered by clouds, the clouds can never touch or change the nature of the blue sky. In the same way, Sometimes our mind is so overwhelmed with delusions and we can't remember our true nature. But that doesn't mean that our true nature doesn't exist at that moment. Our true nature is always there. And although the delusions can cover the nature of our mind, they can never touch or pollute the nature of our mind. Imagining being on the top of a mountain and staring up at the sky that is completely clear and free of clouds. Concentrate on this vast, unobstructed emptiness. Imagine that it flows down and embraces you and your surroundings, and everything becomes like an empty space. Feel the vastness of the sky, of the space. And feel that the nature of your mind is like this clear, empty space. Hold that experience. Meditating on the space-like nature of the mind makes the mind become more light, more light in the sense of illuminating. It is like an inner light that enables us to see things more clearly. A light that dispels the darkness of ignorance. And the mind becomes also more light in the sense of less heavy. When we meditate on the nature of the mind, there is less clinging and aversion in the mind. There are less thoughts and distractions in the mind. And it is the delusions that make the mind heavy. So when we meditate on the nature of the mind becomes more light. And then if you feel like it, you can keep meditating on the clear light nature of your mind. But to finish this session, we dedicate all the positive energy that we have collected by listening and thinking and reflecting. We dedicate that to the happiness and the well-being of all sentient beings. And then I want to thank you for being here today. And I hope I'm going to see you tomorrow again. And then we're going to look into why it is so difficult for us to practice self-compassion, or why we have a lack of self-compassion, where that is coming from. Okay? Thank you very much. And I'll see you tomorrow.